Welcome back. We continue our discussion with Alan Leung, the leader of the Civic Party. Just before the break, we were talking about the support that the Pan Democrats, how united they are in vetoing this final package of proposals of political reform. And you were very confident that they'll all take part and they'll all be united in this. There have been a few of them actually making contradictory comments about this whole thing, including, say, for example, Ronnie Tong. The government has been looking at possible swing votes in your camp. And there are a few possible swing votes, right? I mean, some of these guys could turn their backs on you at the last minute.
Well, I also heard Raymond Tam, the Secretary for Constitutional Affairs, say that he had become more optimistic about the passing of the government proposal. But I really think they are just playing games. You see, recently we have seen doctors, IT people, lawyers, they all voted against pocketing a fake democratic arrangement. So how come that Raymond Tam could be adopting a position of guarded optimism? I just don't see the basis. And of the swing votes that you mentioned, I don't think they are really swingable. I say so because the 831 decision of the NPC Standing Committee is arguably even unconstitutional because if you look at the 2007 NPC Standing Committee decision, which was based on the November 2004 interpretation, according to the CFA, it has become part of the Hong Kong law, so that Annexes 1 and 2 of the Basic Law have now to be read subject to the 2004 interpretation. And in that interpretation, step 2 of the 5-step process actually does not allow the NPC Standing Committee to impose conditions as specific as those done in the 31st August decision. So I don't think anybody, unless he or she wants to commit political suicide, would support a unconstitutional decision of the NPC Standing Committee and any electoral model designed with those restraints. Not to mention that any electoral model to be proposed by the government with those restraints in place could not deliver real democracy into Hong Kong.
Ronnie Tong also said recently that there isn't a single person in the Pan-Democratic camp capable of being a chief executive. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think we should be humble enough to admit that it is not an easy job being the chief executive. And many in the Pan-Democratic camp, in fact all of us, do not have the opportunity to serve in the government. So in that sense, maybe Ronnie has some mileage in what he said. But having said that, mind you, Barack Obama, when he took up the presidency, did not have any experience working as a cabinet minister.
Do we have any Barack Obamas in our Pan-Democratic camp?
Well, you don't know. If the system has will have been changed and a fair system, we could have many very able men and women amongst us that could rise to the challenge. Maybe not from the Democratic camp as narrowly defined.
How about yourself?
How about myself?
How about you running for CE?
Oh.
You did run for it once.
Well, I think NPC Standing Committee decision of the 31st of August is designed to
screen out
people like me.
All right, let's talk about the parliamentary sessions in Beijing.
Yeah.
Premier Li Keqiang's work report. The last one, it was very conspicuous in the sense that the reference to Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong and the high degree of autonomy, those two key phrases were left out. This time they were included. But on top of that, you also heard the Premier talking about not only sticking to the basic law, but also applying China's own constitution.
Well, reintroducing those words, I think, is what the Central People's Government ought to do. I think it owes it to Hong Kong and also to the international presence in Hong Kong, both in the form of investment and also foreigners who are residing here, working here. But you see, words do not speak as loud as acts. What we have seen during this 1 year between the two Premier reports were the 10th of June white paper and the 31st of August NPC Standing Committee decision. These acts of the Central People's Government made Hong Kong people anxious and worried because together with the unilateral declaration by China that the Sino-British joint declaration has been spent, came 1st of July 1997, all made us worry that what we have always thought to be the guardian angel of Hong Kong's values and institutions are now gone. So I think, of course, I welcome the resurrection of these words in this year's Premier report. But what is more important is how the Central People's Government behave and act in time to come. If you truly respect Hong Kong's autonomy and stop calling up legislators, telling us how to vote, all right, that will give us assurances better than simply resurrecting those words.
How do you feel about the reference in particular to China's constitution also being applied?
That is worrying because, you see, in the Chinese constitution, there is clearly set out that the Chinese Communist Party ranks supreme and China is practicing people's democratic dictatorship, and it is all-powerful, omnipotent. For one country, two systems to work, there has to be restraint on the part of the Central People's Government and the Chinese Communist Party. That is the only way that one country, two system can work.
So what are the implications of them talking about the Chinese constitution being applied as well?
Well, the implication in short would be they want to overwhelm two systems with one country. This is particularly so if you take into account the 10th of June white paper and the 31st of August NPCSC decision.
All right, now, we talked about the Sino-British joint declaration, and you've just had the British lawmakers being very critical of the situation in Hong Kong and warning of freedoms being eroded. And this was partly to do with them not being allowed to come into Hong Kong to carry out their so-called fact-finding mission. What do you have to say about that?
Well, whether or not this is an act of revenge, I don't comment. But at least this is the first time in recent months that the British was doing something honorable and what they ought to do. You see, the British ought to say something about the unilateral declaration by the Chinese government that the Sino-British joint declaration had been spent. And also, they have a moral duty to see to it that Hong Kong people will and do get what we have been promised by the Sino-British Joint Declaration and what is promised and enshrined in the Basic Law. Of course, I am not born yesterday. I'm not so naive as to think that the British, or for that purpose the Americans and any other outsider, could help us to achieve the democracy that we want, because by definition, international diplomacy is always directed by national interests. But at least I think the British ought to think that they owe it to Hong Kong people, that the very least is to say something fair about whether or not the Sino-British Joint Declaration have been honored and whether we are getting what we have been promised.
Okay, where are we going now? Because you are going to vote down the final package of proposals. You're pretty confident that all your colleagues will join you in this. What are we looking at now in the coming months and the coming year ahead?
I think in the
more protests, Occupy-style protests?
No, I think from now up to the time of the voting, which is expected to be in July at the latest, I think we really have to do this uphill task well, which is to explain to Hong Kong why we will end up worse than what we are.
I understand that, and you will be going ahead with what you're doing, right? So I'm saying, after that, what happens? Well, are we looking at more chaos now, more turmoil, more political bickering in LegCo, a shutdown maybe?
Well, it is not my forecast, but the forecast of Li Ka-shing and also the Honourable Jasper Tsang, President of the Legislative Council, that Hong Kong definitely will become ungovernable if we do not have a democratic system of election acceptable to Hong Kong people in 2017. So I'm afraid we may be looking at a phoenix reborn.
A phoenix reborn? Explain that how?
Well, phoenix...
the bird that rises from the ashes, right?
Rises from the ashes. That means if the Central People's Government is not coming back to its senses and to honor the promises that it has promised to Hong Kong, then we may have to become worse before we could become better. Hong Kong would become totally ungovernable. Government cannot effectively govern or push through any public policies that are badly needed. So Hong Kong may have to be burned down to ashes. And hopefully, after that, we would rise as the phoenix does.
That sounds highly pessimistic. Anyway, that's all we have time for. Thanks very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.
History. Costa Concordia ship.
We haven't seen something like that since the Titanic.
The 21st century Titanic.
Her speed is dropping off until she's dead in the water.
Following the never-before-seen footage from the evaluation.
Everything started shaking.
Horrendous crash.
This is not an electrical problem. There's something else, and they're not telling us the truth.
Cruise ship disaster.